For those of you who don't know me, my name is Maddie. I get to be one of the pastors here at Epiphany Station. And before we dive into our conversation today, it is time to send off our kiddos to children's ministry. So that's ages 4 all the way through 5th grade. You can head to eKids. If you need anything younger, we have a staff nursery. Just head to the check-in station if you need any help with anything. We keep the kids in. We desire the kids always to be here for baptism, for them to be able to experience it with us and see these people making these decisions. And there's really a story that's going on all the way throughout our morning today. And we think about how we have spent our time so far, declarative in worship, that yes, he can, and yes, he does, and yes, he will. We get to spend our time in worship, being able to address the fact that we believe that in God's presence, as we invite it, miracles happen, things change because of his reckless love and his pursuit of us. We get to celebrate people making those decisions today to accept that love. And our conversation today continues on track with everything that God is wanting you to know today. We're starting a brand new set of conversations, a new teaching series called Do No Evil. Now, I want to give you a disclaimer here. This conversation is not going to feel light, fluffy, nor chipper. None of those things are going to be experienced today. You're thinking, is Maddie going to crack some traditionally amazing jokes? No, that's not even going to happen today either. It happens every other week, though. Amazing jokes. Just you wouldn't believe it. Instead, I get the privilege of starting us off on this track of conversations in this series in which we address the thing that maybe we just don't address enough. The existence of evil. And what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do with the evil that we are confronted with, that we see, that we acknowledge? Because right now, I think a lot of us are like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say, but do no evil. That should be the Hippocratic oath of the church. That we would do no evil, that we would cause no harm, that we would do nothing dishonorable to God. And so the reason for these conversations is simple. I want we to understand how to see evil for what it is, to be able to identify it, to point it out, to acknowledge it, how it is that we're going to actually have the right view of evil when we do acknowledge it, when we come into contact with it, that we don't wink at it, but we say, that's evil, and we actually learn to hate evil the way that God hates evil. And finally, we're going to learn to conquer it. We're going to find out what God has to say about how we are commanded to conquer evil in a way that brings him great, great glory. Our core text for the teaching series, small slice of a bigger chunk, is Romans 12, verse 21. It says, don't let evil conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good. Don't let evil conquer you. Don't let it rule you. Don't let it invade you. Don't let it occupy space that it has no right to occupy. So through these 3 conversations, we're going to see it, we're going to hate it, and we're going to conquer it. And out the back end, if we will do far less evil, and we will know how to conquer evil far greater than we ever started out with. That's the goal, that's the hope, that's the desire. But to be able to have a conversation about evil, I need to cut you off. Because when you talk about evil, here's something that happens in most of our minds. The thing that happens in most of our minds is, I know some evil people. The thing that happens in our minds is, yes, Maddie's obviously talking about that group of people. He's talking about that person, that relative, that president, that country. And as I lead us in this conversation about seeing evil for what it is and where it is, I need you to know that you're going to see more evil, come into contact with more evil, percentage-wise, across your entire life, not from external sources. You're going to see more evil, if you're willing to, within yourself than anyone else in the world. And if we're really going to love God and love people, then we need to not start this conversation with, we're talking about them. We need to be willing to talk about us first. It's an easy thing to miss, and I don't think I'm going to point fingers and like you guys are terrible for not admitting it. I think a lot of times when we have evil, a tendency toward evil, an inclination toward evil, it's not that we live in this fantasy land of somehow we're perfect. We know we're not, right? Right? Okay, I was going to have to change everything for a minute then. We're going to have to go back to some more basic stuff. Right. I think what happens is that we kind of get confused, maybe misled, maybe blind to evil, the evil that exists within. And so because of that, we don't acknowledge it. And that's not a generational thing. That's not a cultural thing. That's a human being thing. That we're more likely to notice the speck and the blemish in another than we are the glaringly obvious thing in ourselves. So we get confused, we get blinded, and we disregard. And I know this is a long-term thing. Like, this isn't just us. This isn't just Thief River Falls, America. We're pretty good in comparison to everyone else. No, we exist as a portion of mankind that has always had this problem. And I know we've always had this problem because God's word speaks about it from thousands of years ago. There's a man by the name of Isaiah who was a prophet to the people, letting them know, here's your deal. Here's what's wrong. Here's the problem. He lived over 2,500 years ago, and what he said to the people is something that could be spoken right now, and you'd nod your head. This is one thing that he said in Isaiah 5:20. He said, "What sorrow for those who say that evil is good and good is evil, that dark is light and light is dark, that bitter is sweet and sweet is bitter." Like, yeah, I know some of those people, but again, I'm going to cut you off. Could that happen in me? Could that actually be happening today in you? Something that we're doing, thinking, acting on that we think is sweet and it's light, it's actually dark and it's bitter. And God would want us to know that. It's not them. Yes, culture gets it wrong. Unchurched, they get it backwards all the time, but so do we in the church. We drink until we get drunk and think it not evil. We utilize sex in a way that is dishonorable to God and think it not evil. We manipulate our money in ways that God would not condone and think it not evil. We withhold affection, we manipulate people, we tell secrets, we gossip, we slander, we lie, and think it not evil. We teach our kids to depend on anything other than the Lord and think it not evil. We devote time, treasure, and talent to things that aren't good, right, pure, honorable, lovely, worthy of praise, and think it not evil. We ignore the evil in the church. And so we stand without any right to tell anyone else how to live their lives when we are not willing to address what is going on here first. Beep. I don't know if this has ever happened to you. This happens to me, and I want to say frequently, but I don't want you to think I'm too bad of a person, so I'll say infrequently, like a liar. This happens to me a lot, a super lot, in which I think about my life, and I think about my history, and memories come back, and I massively cringe. You ever have those moments? It's usually at midnight, you're trying to get to sleep, and you think about the thing you said or you did, and you're like, oh, dang it. I grew up in a house where you were told to be good. That's as far as that went. You were told to be good. I had no idea how to be good. I was not good. And it actually kind of peaked and I think blossomed in like mid-teens. You know, when you get to mid-teens, you lose that kind of sense of, yeah, I'm actually a pretty good person. Usually, so when I hit high school, when I hit secondary school, which is the official and correct term for it, I looked like this. This is me. Dress sense just has always been top notch. And now you can tell why I never want to wear a tie ever again for the rest of my life. That's a uniform I wore for 6 years. Anyway, in high school, sweet-faced Maddie, right, was actually a nasty little kid. To those who I wanted, I seemed pretty nice, pretty good, pretty sweet. But I was a bully. Now, I've never beaten anyone up, never actually been in a fight, never stolen anyone's lunch money. I was a worse kind of bully because I could find the weak spots in anyone. I could craft the words that would just unroot them and cut them down. I would make teachers lose their temper in class to the applause of my friends. I would cut down people to the laughter of the majority because I wanted to be popular and liked. And one of my greatest, still happens midnight cringe moments is how I once spoke to and how she responded, a girl by the name of Samantha. Probably about 9th grade or year 9, as it should be called. I was communicating with Samantha in a not so great way. and I attacked her physical proportions. I called her fat, and it was horrible. And I know it's horrible now. But it wasn't the first time I'd called someone fat. It wasn't the first time I'd been mean. It wasn't the first time I'd been derogatory towards a female at all. Yet something happened in that altercation that changed things. It's the first and only time in my life that I have been properly slapped across the face. Now, I told this to my friend this week, and he says, wow, you've only been slapped once? Your thoughts of me are just endearing. She slapped me, like proper, bang, slap. And it was the first time that I think I fully acknowledged the connection between what I was doing and saying and actual real pain, because she manifested it for me and walked up and slapped. This is what I had just done to her, just not physically. And it started to wake me up and change some of my mentality. It's like, it's actually not okay. It's actually disgusting. It's actually evil. And I look back, and honestly, that slap is one of the best things I ever received in my life. Like, oftentimes we don't like the discipline, right? We don't like to be corrected, but the big slap across the face for me was a great moment, because I look back on it and still cringe, and it reminds me, do you remember how evil you can be? Do you remember what you're capable of without me, your God? And all of a sudden I think to myself, I don't want to go back to that. I don't want to do that. Here comes your slap. I'm just going to line you all up. No, I'm going to kidding. But here comes your slap. Today, there is an evil within you that is poised. It is haunched, it is ready, it is coiled, and it wants to control you. It wants to take over your life. It wants to separate you from your God. It wants to destroy your marriage, wants to ruin your kids. There's evil within each and every one of us that wants to do us great harm, whether we want to admit it or not. Because it's the condition of every human being. Before you drew breath, you're capable of evil. See, going back all the way to the beginning, no man, woman, or child has ever escaped evil. Before the first murder was ever committed, God took the time to speak cleanly and clearly to the would-be murderer, to let him know what his potential future was, so that he might acknowledge something and deal with it before it happens. This is how God spoke to Cain. In Genesis, he said, look, you will be accepted if you do what is right, but if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you, but you must subdue it and be its master. The image there is at the door of you. Like the door of you and your heart and your mind and your will and your soul is sin. And it is crouched and it is poised and it has sharpened its claws and it wants you to widen open that door so it can dig in and control you. God calls it sin, we call it evil. The two are interchangeable. It's the decision to remove God. It's the decision to make God absent. It's the decision that anyone would make to reject God as central and the one who gets to control, and instead to put anything there instead, including ourselves. And everything bad that has ever happened in all of existence, but in your life too, has its root right there. You or someone else decided to allow sin through the door, to allow it to become seen or unseen, but allowed it to manifest evil. And this is what I'm talking about. This is what I mean. Like, you really want to do no evil. You really want to conquer evil. You really want to see less evil out there. Then we have to begin by looking within. Like, we have to be willing to say, okay, it's behind the door there. What am I going to do about that? What am I going to do about the fact that sometimes I swing that door open myself? What am I going to do about the fact that there are places in my life where the claws are already in and I can't seem to shake them loose? I think when we're confronted with that fact, it demands response. Like, if we're willing to spend time admitting it, it demands, okay, what now? And I think one of the best things that can ever happen for us and to us is that we actually get confronted by who our God is. Not just to dwell on, I'm bad, I'm an awful person, it'll forever be this way. That's not where we're taking this conversation, but instead, the best thing could ever happen to you is you are confronted with who your God actually is. Who he is, what his character is, and what he is trying to tell you all the time. Remember Isaiah, Mr. Bittersweet, Light Dark, the guy who said and prophesied to all the people? He knew what it meant to be able to acknowledge the difference between himself and his God. And it made him take stock. And it made him afraid. It made him afraid to stand before his God because there was great difference and great distance. This is what Isaiah said in that instance. It says, then Isaiah said, it's all over. I am doomed. For I am a man, I'm a sinful man. I have filthy lips and I live among a people with filthy lips, yet I have seen the King, the Lord of heaven's armies. Isaiah's fear was, I can't exist in his presence. I can't be around him. It is like scorching. It is so dramatic that I cannot even exist in the same space as him. So it must be that I'm done. I must be doomed because of the situation I am in, standing before something so powerful that I have offended with my evil. To boil it down and just give you like a sliver and a tenth of maybe of a hundredth of the situation you can find yourself in. Imagine walking up to Muhammad Ali in his prime and spitting on his shoes. I'm done. I'm not even going to try and run at this point. It's time to write the check. Imagine you're so bold as to steal the plans for the Death Star and you think you've got away, and then a red lightsaber just illuminates the room and Darth Vader walks in. You're done. You're done. But in both instances, we're working on the premise there that both those individuals would choose to act on what you've done to offend. They choose to punish. And there's something that happens with Isaiah that is the most beautiful thing. The thing that's most necessary, the thing that every single one of us needs to know and understand is really how we deal with our relationship to God being so distant and different. Because out of Isaiah, a man of filthy lips, comes the most beautiful response. A response that actually wipes the spit off the shoes. See what Isaiah says? I'm a sinful man. Yet I'm standing before the King, the Lord of heaven's armies. He confesses the situation, admits it to himself, admits it to the Lord, and he knows he has no power to fix that. We are sinful people, and we stand before the King, the Lord of heaven's armies. He is good, and he is right, and he is pure, and he is lovely. He is everything admirable with no negative. And we, more often than not, are more of the negative than the positive. See, the test of a person who truly wants to love God and love people is not one who sees the difference and then tries to make themselves better, tries to look cleaner, tries to put together this perfect little package family that says everything must be going okay. The true test is someone who's willing to say, I'm a sinful man. I'm a sinful man and I can't do anything about that. There's nothing I can try and do to make up for the sin and the evil within me. And yet I stand before the King, the Lord of heaven's armies, and I'm looking for mercy. Because you see, God's response to these people who are truly blind is not Darth Vader's response. It's not one of, I've been waiting for this moment to judge you and punish you. Instead, what's happening in these moments of good confronted with evil is that God stands ready to deliver mercy. The truly blind can't see that they're blind. They don't know. They can't comprehend. A person who wants to love God and relate to God has the sight to see when evil is evil, when it is within themselves. If you're going to take anything away from our conversation today, you've been tuning out up until this point, you just woke up, you're back in the room, this is the thing that I want you to take. the beginning of, the continuation of, the thriving of a relationship with God is based on, first, our ability to see that we are sinful people. It is not to see ourselves as justified and therefore deserving of Him. It's to see. It's to be able to call out evil. It's to call out sin. And it's that we would choose then to confess it to Him. We confess it to the one who can do something about it. We confess it to the one that can remove the claws. We confess it to the one who can shut evil back behind the door. We confess it to the one. That's the good news. It's the best news that you're going to hear ever. And it's the best news that you're going to hear today. 1 John chapter 1 in verse 9 says this, that if we claim we have no sin, we're only fooling ourselves and not living in the truth. But if we confess our sins to Him, He is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all wickedness. If we claim we have not sinned, we're calling God a liar and showing that His word has no place in our hearts. This right here is where everything's been leading to. Not just today, your entire life. It's leading to this moment that you would be able to acknowledge what God needs you to see. No longer fooling yourself. No longer calling dark light and bitter sweet, but instead calling it is what it is. Being able to say, I am a sinful man. I confess that I'm a sinful man and I need God. Confession is one of the best habits you can ever get into. Like sometimes when we've grown up religious and maybe confession gets put in this little box over here and we think it's weird, we push it to one side and we never touch it again. It's one of the most beautiful things that God offers because confession means done. Confession means spit off the shoes. Confession means forgiven and cleansed. And this is where you come in. This is where all of us come in. This is where those who've never submitted their lives to Christ come in, and those who've been believers for a long time come in. It's where the unchurched have to come in. It's where the long-time churched have to come in. We all come in at this one place, this best news point. The evil you have done and the evil you will forever do, you need not be punished for. You need not be eternally separated from your God for. All because God said, I don't want it to be that way. For those who will acknowledge and confess, I will make a way. And the way He made is the act that every single one of us in this room have heard about. The thing He did. Jesus Christ on the cross. See, every evil thing that ever happens has to lead to death. It has to lead to punishment. It's what happens. It's a principle. So it's either going to be us or it's going to be Him. And God to say, this is how faithful I am to forgive. This is how faithful I am to cleanse. This is how faithful I am to love you. Willingly and intentionally sent His Son to die on purpose so that if you would believe in Him and confess your sin, you could be completely cleansed of it, seen righteous. And so every single one of us that claims, the name of Christian, we base our entire relationship to God on that one act. That's all we've got to stand on. We don't try and earn anything else. That was it. That's what He did to show His love being greater, His faithfulness being greater, more than we could deserve or earn. But there comes a moment for every single one of us where we have to choose to bring confession. In the end, we've got to be willing to bring clear-mindedness and say, I am a sinful person. We have to be willing to bring our submission. We have to be willing to bring our obedience. We do get to bring things like worship, and we do get to bring things like giving and serving. We get to bring things like baptism as signs of our obedience and our devotion to Him. But it comes back to confession first, and confession consistently. So God's wondering of all of us on a daily basis, what will we do? Is darkness light? Is bitter sweet? Or will we confess? See, some of you in the room, like at least one of you in the room, has a piece of you that you acknowledge and know evil has its claws into. Like it's latched and it doesn't feel like it's ever going to get low. You've even tried to shake it loose and you don't believe it's going to. That's the piece that God wants to make holy today, not tomorrow, not in a year from now when you've got yourself better. He wants to show you his power, the power that comes through your confession and his cleansing. There's some of you in the room, there's one of you in the room who thinks you're actually winning the fight of your life because you're keeping in control. Like you're still got your grip on everything and you think you're winning, you're actually losing the war for your soul because you can't fix you. You can't make you right with God. And there's some of us in the room, there's maybe one of you in the room that you've never made that decision to confess. You've never made that decision to repent. You've never made that decision to believe in Jesus Christ. Yet today, it's kind of making sense. Like it's kind of clicking together. Like kind of like God is driving you in that direction and the time is today. We would love nothing more than to talk with you about that. After our experience today, myself, Mary, Pete will be down front. The church exists to help people get to that place of understanding and decision. And like has already been shared today, there are some of you ready to be baptized. An outward expression of an inward decision to decide to put the old to death and for the new life to begin. But all of it, every piece of it comes back to, I can confess that I am a sinful man and I'm going to stand before the King, the Lord of heaven's armies. And I want to stand alongside Jesus Christ when I do. I want to stand there every single day. So like I said, this practice of confession, we're pretty weak on it. Like it's not a thing the church does too regularly. So we're going to do it. And all the fear just lifts up in the room. I'll be down here and you can come one at a time. Again, feels like the slapping thing. You don't need to talk to me about your sin. You don't need any other mediator than Jesus Christ. You get to go directly to your Lord based on him. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take 5 minutes. It's going to go quiet. Emily's agreed to play keys in the background. And I'm going to challenge you to spend time in confession to the Lord, to pray, to talk to him, to ask him to observe, to see, to show you things that you're currently thinking are good that are not, and for you to be willing to confess them directly now to him in the room before you leave today. Because it's one of the best things that can ever happen in your life. Not to keep carrying it over and fighting it over and over again, but to bring it to him and drop it at the cross. So we're going to confess today. After a chunk of time of spending it in confession, myself and Mary will come up with a quick announcement. But take this time. You can spend it on your phone. You can chitter chatter if you want, or this could be one of the most important moments in your entire life in which you start practicing what God has a gift for you, the practice of confession. So let's take some time to do that together.